Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the MMA Corner Prediction Show. As tonight, we give you our thoughts, breakdowns, and predictions for UFC 179, Aldo versus Mendes. As always, tonight's episode is brought to you by Battle Bomb, the only pain reliever with the knockout power. BattleBomb.com. Check them out. In addition, Bony Asai. I say it every time. You know where to go. Bony Asai products. Check them out. They rock. MMAcorner.com. Go hit them up. All right, I'm your host, Josh Davis, alongside my co-host for the evening, news manager, God runs the site, Jose Youngs. Jose, how you doing tonight, brother?
I am pumped. I'm glad the UFC is back. It's been a while, and I'm ready to rock this for all you fine viewers out there.
You know how, yeah, I am. I got to be honest, I'm stoked that the UFC is back. You know, all the people bitch and moan about how they do too many events, this, that, or the other. I could seriously watch UFC every freaking day if it was on. So
Agreed.
I am very, very excited that it's back. So without any further ramblings, let's get into this card. Now, from top to bottom, and, you know, again, I usually try and find the bright points of every UFC card. And from top to bottom, being honest, I give this a C+. You know, we'll have to wait and see how some of these fights pan out. But on paper, I'm not going to lie. It's, you know, especially for a pay-per-view event, it's not a stellar card. But we do have some key fights and some fights that I'm excited to talk about here in just a second. But all in all, it's not the best card in the world. I always am going to recommend, you know, watching it because that's what I do. But I'm not going to tell you that it's the best lineup that they've done this year, because it's not. It's actually probably one of the worst, but still could be a solid card. Like I said, C+. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll agree with that grade. It's obviously the main event is whatever it is going to be talking about is Aldo Mendes 2. The co-main event is Glover Teixeira versus Phil Davis, two light heavyweight contenders coming off losses. So, but outside of those two fights, you have a lot of key, like important fights, a lot of matchups for up-and-coming fighters facing off against a semi-gatekeeper kind of, and you have a couple of those kind of fights. You do have Scott Jorgensen on the prelims card for all those fighters who remember him from the WEC days. I believe he was the last person to face Dominic Cruz for the WEC bantamweight belt before they got absorbed into the UFC. So he's always fun to watch, especially at flyweight. But yeah, as far as pay-per-view goes, this is a little weak, but that's been the story of all of 2014, and we've even had to cancel a pay-per-view because they've been so weak and so watered down. So, but I am very excited for the main event, and I'm actually pretty excited for the co-main event. So, but I will recommend buying this one. It's better than UFC 177 at least.
You know, I have to agree, and I do. For the co-main event and the main event alone, I definitely recommend buying this card. And if you want to see someone just go out and fight, not technical, not special, he's just a fighter, goes out and wants to knock out his opponent and is more than happy to eat shots to get it done, then you need to watch Fabio Maldonado. We'll get to him in a moment, but yeah, this card is definitely one to get. And as far as the preliminaries go, again on Fox Sports 1, definitely check it out. I'm a big fan of Scott Jorgensen. He spends a lot of time training here in Denver at Factory X with all of those guys over there. I hate to say it, I personally think he's fighting for his job here. I think if he loses, he's done. I don't see the UFC giving him another shot. So anytime a fighter is in that type of a situation, expect to see them at their best. And I think we'll see that with Scott Jorgensen. So without any further ado, opening up the main card of this pay-per-view, Beneil Dariush versus Diego Ferreira. Start us off, Jose.
I think this is a pretty good matchup for the opening of a pay-per-view because obviously the first fight of a pay-per-view is meant to kind of draw you in. It's supposed to be it's an exciting fight, but it's never the most. It's obviously not the most important fight. Looking back at the UFC 175, I believe, or one, I can't remember which fight it was. Marcus Brimage fought on the main opening of a pay-per-view fight, and he's one of those fighters that are trying to bump to the next level, but not quite big enough that he can be he can main event a Fox Sports 1 card. I think this is a perfect fight for one of those where Ferrer is 11-0. He's coming off a second-round knockout loss to Tough. I can't remember what season it was on. He was on Team Dos Santos, I believe, the Ultimate season, the Ultimate Fighter. Ramsey Nijem. He's coming off a second-round knockout victory over him at UFC 177. He beat Colin Smith at UFC Fight Night, Swanson versus Stevenson. And that's back-to-back post-fight bonuses. And he's undefeated. He's Brazilian. He's young. So he's one of these guys that's up and coming. He's obviously the UFC is looking for some Brazilian stars now that they're all falling off. And we'll get to that in a second. But Aldo's the only Brazilian to hold a belt now. So they are looking for Brazilian superstars. It is a very important market to them. They've made that known. And I'm not going to say he's the next big superstar, but he's an undefeated fighter who is known. He knows how to finish fights both with submissions and with his fists and kicks. So I do believe they want him to win. And his opponent, Dearusha, or however you pronounce it, is 8-1, and he's coming off a submission victory. So this is another important fight for both guys, and I do think the winner of this fight will get elevated, will stay on main cards, and will cement themselves as a main card fighter. Darush does have the loss to Nijem, and obviously Ferrer has the victory over him. But other than that, this is a pretty exciting match of both of them. I think Darush has 7 finishes in his career, 5 by submission, so I don't see this one going to a decision, and I think this is a pretty stellar matchup, but I'm going to go with Ferrer in this one.
You know, first off, you were right about the coaches, Lesnar and Dos Santos. That was Ultimate Fighter season 13.
Right.
You stat boys out there, and again, I know you're out there. I love and hate you guys all at the same time, I got to be honest. With that being said, I have to agree. You know, I love Ferrer. I really think that this kid, I'm not going to say he's something special yet, but I do think that he has potential. I mean, he has knockout power. He has excellent submission skills. He's well-rounded everywhere. He's great on the ground. I really do think this kid has a lot of potential, and he hasn't even tapped into it yet. I think we obviously we're still waiting for the best to come from this kid. So I'm certainly looking forward to seeing more of him. And I think that's what the UFC is setting us up for here. They're trying to put him in front of the diehard fans, the mainstream fans, and get his name out there. Same thing with Beneil Dariush. I mean, as you said, their one common opponent is Ramsey Nijem, and MMA math is whatever. I beat you up, you beat him up, he beats me up. That's just how it works. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I really do like this matchup on paper. I do kind of think this is pretty much a pick 'em. I know the odds makers have it a little bit different. I am picking Carlos. I think he's, like I said, I think right now he's one of the best up-and-comers that the UFC has. And I think this is the perfect opponent for him to showcase his skills against, because Beneil Dariush will certainly test him, but he'll pass the test with flying colors.
And I want to add that they did a countdown for this fight, the opening fight of a pay-per-view. The UFC did a countdown for it. The only other 2 countdowns they have on this is for the co-main and main event. So they have 3 countdowns, and one of them is this fight, and it's up on YouTube for everyone to watch for free. So if you're interested in these guys, the UFC has done a pretty fantastic job by selling both fighters, and it's kind of showing that they're trying to put a lot of steam behind these 2 guys because they're so young, because they're up and coming. So this is my pick for not fight of the night, or submission of the night, or performance of the night, or whatever. But this is one of my picks for a potential performance of the night's bonus.
Yeah, I certainly won't disagree with that, especially when you look at the overall card top to bottom. And again, it's no disrespect to anybody, but there's 2 fights on this card that I really think could steal the show, and that is absolutely one of them. So moving right along. Up next, Darren Elkins and Lucas Martins. I am looking forward to this fight. First off, Lucas is another one of these up and coming fighters that I'm excited for, that I really do think has a lot of potential. His only losses to Edson Barbosa. Now, he did tap out due to strikes, and I will be honest, in my mind, that is
the worst way to
weakest,
lose.
yes, it's the weakest way you can
You
go out.
got beat into submission.
Exactly. You tap because you want to be able to wipe your own ass for the next 8 months. I get that. I've never understood why you don't just go to sleep, but again, that's just my own opinion. I understand why you tap to a triangle, all that kind of stuff. I don't understand why you tap to strikes, because being real, roll over, give them your back, do whatever you can until the ref comes in and stops it. But tapping to strikes, that's the worst way to go out, and he did that. That's his only loss. I will talk crap about him all day long because of that, but I still think he's got like I said, he's got a ton of potential. I'm excited for this kid. I really like what he brings to the table, and I'm willing to look past I don't know, the bitch move that he made and tapping out due to strikes. Please don't beat me up for saying that when we actually do stand face to face. Now, I'm just being real. Elkins, on the other hand, I love this guy. I really think he is the gatekeeper of this division. I don't think he's the gatekeeper to the title or anything like that. But if you want to be able to get those top 10 opponents, if you want to be able to climb that ladder into title contention, you have to beat guys like Darren Elkins. I love him. He's 17-4, and he's, in my mind, a gatekeeper. This guy's a stud. But I think he's reached his potential. I think Lucas is on his way up. I think Lucas Martin showcases his talents, and I don't know if he can finish Darren. Darren's a pretty tough dude, but I do think he gets the victory. It'll be interesting to see if he gets the finish, but I'm definitely going Lucas. I think he's good enough to start moving up that ladder.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. I agree 100% with your assessment on Elkins being the gatekeeper, and I really do think this is a matchup of differing styles. Elkins does have finishes, but amongst UFC fans and fight fans, he's known for that grind him out style. And even Jeremy Stevens, his last opponent who he lost to by decision, said, I know Elkins is going to try and come and hold me down and hunt me and grind out a win, and I'm not going to let him do that. And he didn't. He pulled out the decision win, but Martin's, on the other hand, has 14 of his 15 wins have come by stoppage, and 10 of them have come by way of knockout, including 2 of his last 3. So he has dynamite in his strikes, and Elkins is known for negating people's striking ability. So I think this is a perfect matchup. I think this is a perfect matchup for Martins, where if he shows he can keep Elkins off the ground and keep him from holding him down and pull out the victory, whether it be a decision or a stoppage, then he will be maybe not top 10, but he will be top 15 in my opinion, and he does deserve a top 15 fighter, and maybe we could see him being in title contention in late 2015 and his first step is Elkins. When I first heard about this fight, my initial reaction was Elkins is going to grind him out. But then I watched some more of Martin's fights, and he does have he does know how to get off his back. So my initial thought was Elkins by decision, but after thinking about it and just seeing Lucas Martin's body of work, I'm going to say Martin's by second round TKO.
See, and one of the deciding factors in me picking Lucas in this fight is he has proven time and time again that he can get off of his back, that he can get back to his feet. And as much as I love Darren, because I do, I think the guy's a very talented fighter. The only way he wins this fight is if he's able to get those takedowns and hold him down and basically control position for 15 minutes. And I don't think he can do that. I think he's going to eat some punches, and I think after a while he's going to be reluctant to go in for those takedowns. So, but who knows? I could be an idiot, and Darren could go in, slam him down, and just hold him there. So we'll have to see how it goes. Moving right along. Fabio Maldonado versus Hans Stringer. I'll let you start us off on this one.
Well, I know one of the very first names you said when we started talking about this was Fabio Maldonado, and he is like the cult hero of not just the light heavyweight division, but of the UFC's organization. I mean, every fight this guy is in, whether he wins or loses, is just exciting. I mean, when he fought Glover Teixeira, pretty much everybody had him written off, and he put in a very valiant effort. I mean, his face looked like raw hamburger meat at the end of that fight, and the doctor had to stop it. He would not go down. He was eating those sledgehammer fists from Glover Teixeira, and he even tagged him with a few hooks. I mean, he does have a very impressive boxing background. He did lose to Stipe Miocic in his last fight, but I don't even count that because he came in on like a few weeks' notice, and he moved up to heavyweight, and like he was preparing for a top 5 heavyweight in the main event. So you can't really hold that against him. But so looking past that fight, his last performance against Gian Villante, which I watched, in one of the most, from top to bottom, one of the most exciting fight cards of the year, the UFC Fight Night Shogun versus Henderson 2, he was pretty handily beat by Gian Villante in the first round. Gian Villante did a lot of wrestling because he does train with Chris Weidman. He has a football background, and you could see Fabio Maldonado was getting very frustrated. The crowd was getting very frustrated that their cult hero was being held down and his weapons were being taken away from him. As the fight went on, he got to his feet, and he beat the hell out of Gian Villante in that third round, and he pulled out the decision because he definitely lost the first round, but he did so much damage to Gian Villante in that round. I thought Gian Villante was just going to pass out from just punches, not like go unconscious, but he just looked like his body just couldn't even handle the amount of physical damage Fabio Maldonado was putting on him with those fists, and that was his third win in a row after Glover. And I can't say Fabio Maldonado is a top 10 light heavyweight. He could be 15 at the highest, but he will always have a job in the UFC because he takes fights on short notice. He's never in a bad fight. And his opponent, I believe his opponent is from the Netherlands. And I also believe this is his second fight in Brazil, in the UFC. I think it's the second fight in the UFC, and both of them have been in Brazil, but correct me if I'm wrong. He might have even been on that same Hendo versus Shogun card back in March or April. And he does have the draw in World Series of Fighting, but so he is on an unbeaten streak. He's not on a win streak because he has a couple of draws in his past few fights, but he has maybe 15 or 16 stoppage victories out of 22, 25, so he knows how to finish people too, but I think it's nearly impossible to finish Fabio Maldonado with anything but a submission in the light heavyweight division. So this is my pick for another performance of the night. I want to say fight of the night, but there are so many fights on this card that it's hard to choose one, but this would be my leading candidate for fight of the night just because Fabio Maldonado is in it. And I'm going to say he wins by decision in a very exciting fight.
Yeah, submission or a sledgehammer maybe, but other than that, you're not going to finish. And I love Fabio, not because he's a technical fighter, not because, Mark Hominick was one of the most technical fighters that the UFC's ever seen, and I love that kid for it. Fabio Maldonado is not a technical fighter. He's just a brawler. He goes in there, and he loves to hit people. Like you said, he has previous boxing experience. I think he was a professional boxer back in Brazil. He's not in there to kick fools. He's not in there to take fools down. He's in there to throw punches and, try and knock your head off, and he does so pretty effectively. His cardio is insane. The punishment that this guy can take is second to, really none. I guess maybe Roy Nelson, but other than that, this dude is vicious. And yeah, he got whooped by Stipe. Oh well, pretty much most everyone in the UFC will. So I don't hold that against him. I love the fact that he stepped up and took the fight on a couple of weeks' notice. Weighed in, it barely made the heavyweight division.
And he looked pretty soft. His body looked pretty soft for a heavyweight too.
You know, so let's be serious about it. Is he a top 10 light heavyweight? No. Is he a top 10 light heavy or top 15 light heavyweight? Maybe. I don't care. I love watching him fight. And anytime this dude fights, I want to be there. I want to watch it. I don't care if it's in the back alley. I don't care if it's in the cage. You know, if it's on the beach somewhere. I want to see this dude fight. He just comes to fight. And because of that, no offense to Hans, who's a hell of a fighter, I just don't think he'll be able to deal with everything that Fabio's he's gonna bring. He's, you know, gonna hit him with everything, and I think eventually, like many other fighters, his body will wilt, he will cave, and I think Fabio, in the end, will get a decision. Will he lose a round? Probably. He usually does, but he always finds a way to pull the victory out of his ass, and I think he's, again, going to do that here. He's going to continue to pound on Hans, and eventually Hans will wilt like everybody else. I agree. That is probably going to be the fight of the night. I think, excuse me, I think these guys match up so well against each other. They are going to punish each other until somebody can't take it anymore. And again, I think that'll be Hans. All right, Phil Davis, Glover Teixeira. Who's up? Is it me or you?
I'll take it.
You.
This is a hard one because obviously Glover. When I say Glover hits hard, Glover's one of the few fighters where Vanderlei Silva was in this category and Junior Dos Santos and Mark Hunter in this category. I fear for his opponent's well-being when he connects with a fist. Like his fists are put out so much damage that he is dangerous to turn your lights out anywhere. And obviously John Jones, the master technician or game planner, as we've said on our website earlier this week, he negated Glover Teixeira's fist by getting in his face. Exactly what they said Glover would need to do. And Glover Teixeira does have like a very impressive stand-up background. He does have dynamite in his hands and his knees, but he does have the submission game too. I think he has 6 or 7 submission victories. He has a black belt he does have a black belt. So he has a submission win over James Tahuna. He has a submission victory over Kyle Kingsbury. So he can put away UFC caliber fighters with his ground game. But he also has a TKO victory, the doctor stoppage over Fabio Maldonado. He didn't finish Fabio, and he did get rocked a few times by Fabio, but he did finish him. He finished Ryan Bader. And I talked to Ryan after that fight, and he said he kind of got lulled into Glover's style, where Glover has such good takedown defense that Ryan just kind of decided he was going to stand and try and pick him apart and then take him down. But Glover showed that even if he's hurt against the cage, if he can connect with one punch, his opponent will most likely go to sleep. And he's one of the few fighters in the UFC that has that capability outside of the heavyweight division. But Phil Davis is the NCAA wrestling champion. From what I keep hearing, Phil Davis's stand-up has improved, but I have not seen it. He looks terrible, and it's not terrible. He looked just overmatched in his fight against Anthony Johnson. Anthony Johnson said, going into that fight, I was there. He told me to my face, he goes, let Phil Davis try and take me down. It won't work. I know how to stop his takedowns. And he did. He stopped almost every single one of Phil Davis's takedowns, and you saw Phil get frustrated, and that kind of took him out of his game. If Phil Davis can't take his opponent to the ground, he won't be able to stand and bang with him. He doesn't have that capability that George St. Pierre does, that John Jones has, where if he can't take you to the ground, he'll still kick you, he'll still punch you, and he can beat you on the feet. It seems like Phil Davis leads with his head a lot. He doesn't have the crisp technical boxing. His ground game his wrestling attack is almost second to none in the UFC's light heavyweight division. And he has a very unorthodox submission game where he doesn't use conventional jiu-jitsu. He'll use that Mr. Wonderful behind the back Kimura. He'll use the anaconda chokes or the Darce chokes. He won't go for the arm bars or the guillotines. He'll have a very unorthodox, smothering but powerful submission attack. So I think if Glover can keep the fight standing, it is his fight to lose. I mean, he he completely overmatches Phil Davis. Phil Davis's stand-up game in my mind, and I think his wrestling is good enough to keep the fight standing. He showed that against Ryan Bader, and he did lose to John Jones, but everybody loses to John Jones, so I won't hold that against him. So I do think that Glover is good enough on the ground that he can negate some of Phil Davis's submission game, and he does have a good enough takedown defense that he can keep the fight standing. And Phil Davis showed in his last fight against Anthony Johnson that if he can't take the fight to the ground or if he can't implement his wrestling game, he's lost out there. So unless he corrected those mistakes, I can't see him winning. So I see Glover winning by either a decision or a late finish.
Well, I look at this fight a couple different ways. And for me, we know what Glover's going to do. I mean, he's no disrespect to Glover because I love him to death. I think he's a great person and a great fighter, but he's a one-trick pony. I mean,
Agreed.
He's going out there. He's going to knock you out with his fists. He doesn't have any kicks in his repertoire. He's not stellar in the clinch. He is a pure striker. He does it very well, obviously. We know what you're going to get with Glover, so there's no question there. The true question is what Phil Davis shows up to fight. Is it the Phil Davis that shows up to outpoint you like he did against Lyoto Machida and basically just dance around, don't take any damage, and steal the round within the last minute to the last 30 seconds? And he could very easily do that with Glover. Stand on the outside, make Glover chase him around, wing some punches, and then steal an easy takedown when Glover's off balance, win the round, essentially win a boring fight. That's one way it could go. Another way it could go is Phil believes in his quote-unquote new and improved striking. I agree with you, Jose. I've not seen it. I've heard an awful lot about it. I've been told about it. Still just haven't seen it with my own eyes. And I've watched Phil. It's not like I've missed any of his fights. I've seen every one that he's ever had. But I've not seen this improved striking. But let's, again, say that he believes in it like he did against Anthony Johnson. Goes out there, tries to strike with him, gets outclassed, gets put in a position where he can't get a takedown because he's already been outclassed. Anthony knows that, Phil offered nothing for him on the feet, so there was no way he was giving up a takedown because he knew he could batter him every time he came in for it. If Phil puts himself in that position, I imagine that Glover will beat him up too. However, as much as I love Glover, I think this is Phil's fight to lose. I think Phil has more ways to win this fight. No, he's not going to outstrike Glover, but get him in the clinch, hold on to him, get a trip, get a weak takedown, whatever. Phil has more ways to win this fight. All he's got to do is not get knocked out. And as much as I hate to say it, I think Phil will analyze this fight. He'll fight very GSP-esque. It'll be a very smart fight. He is simply going to go in there, look to outpoint Glover. I don't think he is going to try and beat Glover up. I think he's going to try and steal some takedowns, maybe get a little ground and pound, do just enough to win. Now, both fighters, as you pointed out, are coming off losses. Whoever loses this fight is screwed. They're back at the bottom of the ladder, have to work themselves all the way back up. I don't know. I like Phil in this fight. I think Phil's going to be able to win the decision. I'll stop it at that. Moving right along, Jose Aldo, Chad Mendes. Just to keep the routine, I feel like I'm babbling over here. Let's send it off to Jose.
I don't really. This is one of those fights where I think this is every single fight Jose Aldo is in, I go in saying this is a coin toss, but then he always shows me that it's not. Like, he's so much better. Going into that Frank Edgar fight, I wrote an article and I was like, Jose Aldo's going to win, only because I flipped a coin. I thought for sure Frankie could win that fight, and Jose Aldo completely outclassed him. The Ricardo Lamas fight, Ricardo Lamas is a great wrestler, and I thought for sure that he was going to implement some style of wrestling. And I thought Jose Aldo would win, but I thought it would be so much closer than that. I didn't think that Jose Aldo would win by that much like he did against Ricardo Lamas. And I kind of have that same feeling going into this fight where, yeah, he did beat Chad Mendes the first time, but he held the fence. And people, like Jose Aldo has said, like, that's in the past, whatever. Like, that made a big difference. Like, he held the fence, and then that stopped Chad Mendes from securing the takedown late in the first round, and he got to just plant his knee right between Chad Mendes' eye a few seconds later. That was a huge game changer. If that doesn't happen, Chad Mendes probably wins that round, and he goes into the second round. And Chad Mendes, that was what, like 2 years ago? Chad Mendes is a completely different fighter. He has Dwayne Bang Lugwood. He has the new bantamweight champion training with him. He has Uriah Faber with the stand-up. He has Joseph Benavidez with the stand-up. These guys are all just, their stand-up has just exploded, that they know are no longer just a bunch of wrestlers. They have the stand-up. They do have the knockout power. I know he has like five fights in a row, and he had a streak of 4 straight knockouts, and I know he did have that last decision victory over Nick Lentz, but he said he was sick going into that fight, and he has had a very long layoff. This fight was already supposed to have happened in UFC 176 in Los Angeles, and Jose Aldo and all of Novu now is kind of on Dana White's, he's in the dog. That whole team is in the doghouse with Dana White. It's because of the weight cutting fiasco, because of all these stories coming out, how they cut weight wrong, and they complain. Jose Aldo is complaining about money now leading up to this fight. So that fight is like, that whole gym is kind of in Dana White's like doghouse. And on the opposite, Dana White loves Team Alpha Male. Uriah Faber will do anything for Dana White. Dana White will do anything for Uriah Faber. Tito Dillashaw is the champion. Chad Mendes has won four straight fights by way of knockouts, while Jose Aldo was just cruising to a bunch of decision victories and fighting maybe once a year. So I do not know who to pick for this one. My gut says Jose Aldo, because you always want to side with the champion, and because he's looked so dominant. But Ricardo Lamas said that he wanted to prove a point where he wanted to stand and bang with Jose Aldo and show that he could hang with Jose Aldo in the stand-up department. I don't think Chad Mendes is going to be like that. If he sees an opening to secure to land a knockout punch, he'll do it. But if he sees a chance for a takedown, his wrestling is better than Ricardo Lamas. His wrestling is probably one of the best in the featherweight division. I think he will drop Jose Aldo on his butt, and I don't think he'll make that mistake where he'll let up late in the first round. I do think the referee will be looking for the cage grab. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Chad Mendes is going to win. I don't know how, but I think he will win. I do think it's a lopsided decision. We're probably going to see Chad Mendes face Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo move up to the lightweight and face the winner of Melendez and Pettis. So that's just my opinion. I would love I can obviously see Jose Aldo winning, because Jose Aldo always wins. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say Chad Mendes pulls this out. But I can't pick how.
Well, I got to be honest, brother. I don't think you're going out on a limb at all, actually. I think this is Chad Mendes' fight to lose. Now, if you follow the MMAcorner.com, your home for all things MMA, you'll notice that we do a feature piece for Bellator and the UFC. And it's called Davis vs. Stir, and it's myself and the senior editor of the site, Garrett Durr. We go head-to-head in making picks. Now, the thing about it is Garrett and I think very similar. And when we pick fights very similar. Now, each event we take turns to start with the picks, and the other one follows up. Well, this week I was second in making the picks, and so I did not want to have the exact same picks as Garrett, because if we do that, then what's the point? So this is one of the fights that I went differently on. I do think that this is Mendez's fight to lose. I think Chad's made a lot of improvements since he lost to Jose. And if you look at that fight, like you were just speaking about, Chad was winning that first round. That doesn't mean that he was going to go on and win that fight, but he was winning that first round. Again, things happen. It's whatever in the heat of the moment. It was a clear cage grab. That clear cage grab is what allowed Jose to get the release, to turn. As Chad had his head ducked, he was going in for another takedown. Jose was able to land the knee. He wasn't even throwing the knee. If you watch it, he was throwing a kick. It just so happened that Chad's head was down. He was going for another takedown. The knee hit him, put his lights out. Is that going to happen again? I don't know. But that's what Jose needs to win this fight. I don't think Jose has the cardio to go 5 rounds with Chad Mendes, to be real honest. We know what the weight cut does to Jose Aldo. We've seen him gas in the past. He gassed against Mark Hominick, and I sat cage side for that fight. I actually scored it a draw because I did give Mark a 10-8 round in the 5th, and I actually gave Mark the 3rd round. So to me, that fight was a draw, and it was all because Jose Aldo gassed, and we've seen him do it in other fights as well. He's a very, very big guy, and I'm not going to say they cut weight wrong, but the way they cut weight certainly does have a toll on the body. And if he doesn't have a solid weight cut for this fight, I don't think he has the cardio to compete with Chad. So I think if it goes into the later rounds, this is Chad's fight to lose. I think everything is in his favor right now. But with that being said, because I have to go against Mr. Durr, I am going with Jose Aldo, and here's why. First off, he's the champion, and to be the champion, you have to beat the champion, and nobody has done that. He's the only featherweight champion in UFC history. He has basically dominated everybody that the UFC has thrown against him. Yeah, he's had, like, again, the fight with Mark Hominick that I just alluded to. But Jose dominated that fight. I mean, he wasn't, and even when he was mounted and completely gassed out, he wasn't in any danger of losing that fight. So he's whooped everyone he's faced, and again, he was losing the fight to Chad Mendes and ended up knocking him out. So he's proven time and time again that he's the man, that he is the class of that division until someone comes and strips his title. He's the man. And, like I said, I do think this is Chad's fight to lose. But in my heart of hearts, I do not think Chad's the guy that's going to beat Jose Aldo. I think, like you alluded to, I think Jose is eventually going to move up. I think he's going to win this fight. There's really not any other title contenders for him. After Anthony Pettis and Gilbert Melendez fight, I guarantee you, if Anthony Pettis wins that fight, he's going to talk a little bit of trash to Jose, call him out, tell him he's weak for dodging him the last time. And, I think we're going to see that fight at 155. But all the money stuff that Jose talks about, you get paid very well for the weight class that you're in. And this is no disrespect to any of those guys. But it's a well-known fact that the market value for 155-pound fighters and below is quite a bit less than the market value for 170-pound fighters and above. And no matter what you do, you're not going to get the $400,000 just to show up like, let's say, a Rashad Evans does. He gets that because he's a light heavyweight. He's in a division that offers a lot of excitement, and people want to see that. You go to decisions consistently in a smaller weight class. You get paid very well for where you're at, and I don't see the UFC changing that. So with that being said, I am going with Jose. I am saying that Jose's next fight will be Anthony Pettis if Anthony Pettis defeats Gilbert Melendez. But that's a lot of ifs. We'll have to see. Jose, final thoughts?
Oh, my final thoughts is the UFC obviously this is the first UFC fight we've had in a few weeks, and I feel like this was normal a few years ago where we would have one pay-per-view every month. We'd have 12 or 13 events every month, and we would have that random fight card on Spike TV back in the day. But now going to a few weeks without a UFC card is weird now. We had like several weeks in a row where there was either a Fight Pass card or a Fox Sports 1 or a pay-per-view, sometimes 2 in one day. And this is just kind of a bizarre feeling to me in that only a few years removed from having those 13, 14 events a year, that we're now going 2 weeks and we're feeling kind of withdrawals from the UFC. And I can't decide if it's a good thing or a bad thing, because some people, I do see the argument for oversaturation, but like you said at the beginning, I could watch UFC every single day. And with Fight Pass, I do watch UFC almost every single day. So it's a very bizarre feeling to me, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the matter too, because obviously you've been following UFC for so long, and you remember when the UFC probably had less than 13 fights a year, and now we're having 2 on one day, sometimes fights on a Wednesday, and it's just a weird feeling to me that we're having this discussion with just a few weeks removed from that last UFC fight.
To be real honest, I saw cage side for UFC 1 at McNichols Arena, and I had to wait a year for the next one. I mean, I have been hooked ever since, I saw Hoist Gracie in the back, this little dude who was he literally was 171 pounds. I watched him weigh in the back, and I think they said he was like 186 or something. He wasn't. He was 171 pounds. He was just a little tiny dude. I mean, by no means was he the biggest Gracie. He wasn't even bigger than Henzo at the time. And, I've been hooked. And so to watch the progression to me, and now that it's gone mainstream, I remember just a few years ago when, it was one event a month, and then if you got an occasional spike event in the meantime or something like that, holy crap, you were just freaking stoked. That was like Christmas. And now it's to the point where I got to be honest. I expect that every month we'll have, 2 pay-per-views, a Fox Sports card and a real Fox card. And that's, how I expect the trend to move. And that's not including any of the Fight Pass stuff. That's in addition to all these other things. I have not seen their calendar, but I would not be surprised if we're looking at 60 events by 2016. That would not surprise me at all. And again, that's because the UFC is going to be doing events in Asia on the same day that they're doing events in Brazil, on the same day that they're doing events here in the States. So they're continuing to grow. They're truly becoming a world company. And as such, we will get a whole lot more fights, and I am freaking excited. What I do hope for is that fighters quit getting injured. Quit beating yourself up in training. Train smart. Don't be stupid. Seriously. Because as a person, I look at it like this. We, right here, run a media company that relies on these fighters. No disrespect, but we do our jobs if they're not fighting. So we need them to train smart so we can cover them, so we can give them all of the publicity that they deserve for training their ass off so they can go compete in the cage that we love to watch. But the main thing is I love the UFC. I love all of MMA. I really look for the day when these promotions work together and we get to see fights that we wouldn't be able to see normally, like, a Michael Chandler versus whoever in the UFC, whatever the case may be. But, I think, again, as we move into the future, we won't be having these droughts anymore. And to be real honest, I don't think the UFC wants us to have droughts. I think the UFC wants us to be able to watch UFC content 24/7, and not just content, but live content, and that's the big key. While I will watch the same fight over and over and over and over again, sometimes even hoping for a different winner or expecting a different outcome, but I will still watch it over and over again because I love fighting. I love analyzing that crap. I do. It's something that intrigues me. Same reason why I watch the same football game over and over and over again. I get off on it. All right, final thoughts.
Pretty much it. You said everything that I was gonna say, and then I would recommend buying this fight card. I know UFC. Some people are probably saving their money for UFC 180, and now that whole Cain Velasquez injuring his knee thing might have put a damper on your plans. But honestly, if you're trying to pick between the two, you really can't go wrong. And if you want to pay for this one instead of UFC 180, I wouldn't blame you. This fight card it's rare you get to see one of the greatest fighters who ever lived, and the greatest featherweight who ever lived in the prime of his career, and you're going to get to see that on Saturday. So I would not fault you for buying this one over UFC 180. So that's my final thoughts, and I'll be buying it, and I'll be sitting right down my popcorn watching Jose Aldo do his thing.
You know, here's my thought. Buy them all. Seriously, buy them all. Do what you have to do. Go to a bar, whatever. Make sure that you watch them. Now, I do understand that, not everyone can buy them all. I'm married with children, and my wife informs me that we can't buy them all. I do anyways, and we have those fights every month. But, it is what it is. But for those people who seriously don't have the luxury of buying the event, guess what? We here at the MMAcorner.com, your home for all things MMA, have you covered 100%. If you can't watch the event, guess what? Live coverage. Follow us on. You can follow the site at the MMA Corner. Very easy. We'll give you all the up-to-date access that you need. Now, let's say that you want more than that. You want written recaps. Well, guess what? We have those too. You need even more than that. Immediately following the event, you can watch the post-fight press conference and post-fight video highlights. You can't afford to watch it. I get it. We will have video highlights of all of the main event, or of all of the main card on the site within an hour after the show. We have you covered. That's what we do at the MMA Corner. Mr. Youngs dedicates his day, trust me, dedicates his day. He has a day job, or at least that's what he tells me. As much as he's working on the side, I don't know that I believe in, but that's what we do here at the MMAcorner.com. We dedicate our time to make sure that you guys, the fans, have all of your MMA needs. So definitely go check it out. Now, we will be back Saturday night giving you breakdowns. Lovely show. Letting you know everything that happened. So until then, go to the MMAcorner.com, your home for all things MMA. Get your MMA fix. While you're there, click on Vitor's Ugly Face. Bonius Eye products, they are running great sales. I got an email today. They're giving away hats and T-shirts and all kinds of crazy crap with every purchase. I think you might even get an autograph. I'm not sure on that, but I think you might. You'll have to click on it, check it out. As always, Battle Bomb, the only pain reliever with the knockout power. Check them out. For Jose Young, I'm Josh Davis. Keep living the MMA Corner lifestyle.